It's a great pleasure and an honor to introduce Guillermo de Anda Alanis, or Memo, yes?
Yeah, easier.
Okay. Easier. Okay. He's been doing some fantastic and most really incredible work in the cenotes and in the limestone caves in the Yucatan, and understanding the relationship between these caves and the aquifers and the water management in the Yucatan is essential to understanding the success and failure of Maya culture. So I'm not going to talk about it because I'm going to turn it over to Memo here, and we'll let you get going with this presentation. I'm very excited to see this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm honored to be invited to your university and share with you and some of your students our work, which is a little bit of new methodology. Caves are, we know now, super important, but they have not have the proper attention, we believe. At least we cave archaeologists know that cave archaeology discipline wasn't recognized until very, very little time. My co-director in this project is Dr. Jim Brady, who is the father of the discipline of cave archaeology, a good friend as well, mentor, and a very, very fun person, very, very knowledgeable. And he actually founded this discipline probably 30 years ago, no more than that. And so I am very honored to present this with you guys and present what we believe about caves, collapses, crises, and what caves can teach us about all that. So let's start. Let me show you some pictures. I am very privileged to be able to show you amazing pictures from. Let me see. Yeah, we got it. You got it, okay?
Yeah, it's good.
I just had to send the reference of the link to a couple of colleagues. I'm sorry. They were just asking me about it. Anyway, well, we have this project we've been working on for over 25 years. We have been exploring caves. And let me tell you, I'm going to refer to caves today. And when I say caves, that means this kind of caves, dry caves that you can walk in or crawl in, as you will see, or flooded caves, which we call cenotes. You might be aware of that, because cenotes are now very popular all over the world, even for tourism. And they are, as I said, they're having the focus of most tourism, exploration, and I will tell you a little bit all that in a minute. We know caves have been used by humans for a long period of time. If we want to trace the origins of man, it's going to be finding caves or rock shelters. The first forms of art happen in caves. And for the Mesoamerican people that we'll be talking about today, specifically the Maya, caves were super important in their cosmogony. Caves belong to one of the three layers of the universe: heavens, the earth itself, and the underworld. They are so important that places like Teotihuacan, that I am sure you're familiar with, probably the most amazing city in all Mesoamerica, very mysterious because we still don't know who the Teotihuacans were, who the people that lived there were. Anyway, they started this cave use as part of the settlement pattern. This amazing pyramid you're seeing is the pyramid of the sun in Teotihuacan, that it was built over a cave. Let me show you with my pointer here. it is a representation of the creation cave, of the Chico Mostok, a Nahuatl name to describe this origin cave where everything was created and where the first humans came through. Um, Teotihuacan as well gave us an amazing surprise a few years ago, maybe eight, I believe, or nine. This is not part of the city. This is the Ciudadela, or the Quetzalcoatl Temple. Quetzalcoatl was a very important deity. It was the feather snake that we can see almost all over Mesoamerica. And this pyramid, this temple, it's built over an artificial cave once again. This cave, it's amazing, and they describe it as even a place with that can compare to the tombs in China that we have not proved that they exist, because there was on this cave there was rivers of mercury to simulate stars. So it's really important, and for us cave archaeologists, the importance is that Mesoamericans don't stop building caves even though they don't have them in their site. This is Palenque, another very well-known place. Um, this is the pyramid of the inscriptions, temple of the inscriptions, that was built to be the funerary place of Pakal, um, one of the most important kings of the dynasty on the classic period, around 683 EC. What you see there, it's a big mausoleum constructed in the shape of a cave. So Pakal can start his travel through the underworld to get to his resting place and be able to be reborn. It happens that they discovered just a few years ago that the tomb itself, that the artificial cave itself, it's built over another cave with water that's supposed to take Pakal's soul through the watery underworld. So we have a lot of evidence of cave use in the Maya area. This is Chenes region, Chicana. They didn't have a cave right on their side, so they built it. They built this amazing facade to simulate the entrance of a cave, the entrance of a earth monster with fangs. This represents the portal to enter a cave. We also have Tonina, same pattern. We have Hormiguero, once again, a big representation of a cave. And in central Mexico, in this goes to old Mesoamerica, we have the Mexica site of Malinalco, which is the temple of the eagles, eagle warriors, which is nothing else but the representation of an amazing cave. On that area, another amazing example is Xochicalco, where they build an astronomical observatory where the light can go through 2 times a year during the zenith passage of the sun, that we have learned that it was much more important than other astronomical dates. So we have even almost a laser beam in Xochicalco, built artificially. You can see it on the right hand side. How they build the ceiling of that cave to make it able to let the sunlight go through in those 2 important astronomical dates. Ekbalam, a recently discovered place, maybe 20 years ago. Well, it was not discovered 20 years ago, but it was liberated. It was starting to work on, and it gave this amazing surprise. We have the mausoleum of Ukikanletok, the king that built the Acropolis in Ekbalam. And guess what? Once again, it's in the shape of an earth monster. The entrance to the underworld is the entrance of a cave. Iconography. Well, we have the amazing example of San Bartolo murals. This is a very old tradition. This is a pre-classic mural, which is beautiful and much bigger than what I'm showing to you. But what I am showing, it's an important part of it because it represents the entrance of a cave with a feathered snake and a beautiful woman. There's even a stalactite here. Sorry, yeah, a stalactite, and in the shape of a snake as well. Here we have this beautiful woman uh, receiving or giving this offering of probably tamales, a very popular food in Mexico from pre-Hispanic times to our times. The codex have a lot of representations of caves, dead. This is a dead person going through the earth monster, going to their its resting place. Is in the Laudian. I hope I'm pronouncing well. Codex. We have the history, the Toltec Chichimeca history, which is another set of codices. This is the Chicomostoc, the seven caves, the place of the seven caves where humanity and fertility and food and all the goods were created for the Mexica. We have another map from that from colonial times representing the same cave, the same Chicomostoc. Then we can go to the post-classic codexes in the Mayan era. This is part of the Dresden Codex with Chak. This is the water god. Chak is standing right on top of Cenote. As I told you before, we're going to use the word cave for both caves and cenotes. You might recognize this amazing drawing from Cathergood. They went visiting places. They went drawing these amazing lithographies. And this is a place in Campeche, in the Yucatan Peninsula, called Bolon Chen or Stankum Bingshunan, Bolon Chen, the nine wells, or Stankum Bingshunan, the site of the hidden lady. There's a lot of legends and stories about this place, but it shows us something, a moment of desperation, a moment of drought in that area, and people build this huge ladder to be able to go down to the water level and get water for their main needs. So caves and cenotes represent places of nature, of a dual nature, because they represent life and death, good and bad, disease and health, night and day, up and down. So we can see that representation very very clearly when we see the entrance of an amazing cave like this one. So I wonder, why is it with all this important um, material evidence, why caves were forgotten for such a long time by researchers? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question, but I know that on the late 50s, Dr. Willie Andrews IV, working in Civil Chaltun, attempted to do an archaeological excavation in that site with an amazing cenote. What they get, it's the basis of the modern uh, cave archaeology for flooded caves, but they achieve it not in a very orthodox way. As you can see, this is an amazing picture, but we archaeologists see that and we got a little bit of a shock because this is not the proper way to handle an amazing piece of ceramic that might contain something very valuable that might be lost just by removing it like that. But anyway, that was the hard beginnings of our discipline. And now we have evolved in so many ways. And now we know that these amazing places, they are not only beautiful and mysterious, but they can give us a lot of information related to their times of splendor and their times of doom. So the information they contain, it's overwhelming. We started a project a few years ago, but one of our first discoveries was this cave in the center of Yucatan. What you see there, it's a road. Can you see this road? It was built by the Maya, by the ancient Maya. Sorry, and it goes all the way to the water. It's about 100 meters long. The remains of it, and it gets to the water, and guess what? You dive that body of water that you see behind, and you get into another chamber where this causeway that the ancient Maya used to call Sac Be of, it's plural. It's wide roads. Um, it continues even though there is water nowadays. So we know the Maya didn't have diving equipment or underwater lighting. They might be able to hold their breath, but it's a long, long way to get to the other chamber, and then you're gonna have to get there and work. So what we started living, this is one of the caves that gave us a clue about what might be happening. How that happened? How can they go through? Well, we start speculating on the fact that they might had a big drought, a big crisis in the time this road was built, which is, by the way, the terminal classic period that goes around the 10th century, or 10th to 11th century of our era, or that area. We continue with our explorations and we get to this amazing place very close to the one with the causeway, where we found practically a temple submerged. It gets to maybe 30 meters, and we can still see some of the steps, some of the ornaments, like this beautiful sculpture of a head with you can see the eyes here, nose, mouth, the headdress with maybe an owl. This might be um, a priest or somebody very important in their community, and it's underwater now. You can see not only the ornaments but dates, hieroglyphic inscriptions. This one belongs to a date. It's three image, and our good friend and colleague Dave Stewart, a very famous epigrapher, told us, well, remember this? It's a calligraphy that belongs to the classic period. The thing is that we are in the middle of post-classic area, and so we believe something very, very bad happened to this city in the middle of Yucatan in the around the 10th century. All this temple is there, and our most current hypothesis is it was destroyed by force, and they throw it into the cenote, which was not easy because to get into this area, you have to go through a little restriction. And to make all this material pass through must require a lot of violence, a lot of strength, a lot of intention to sunk it. There is some violent images there, like this sculpture. Maybe you can see there is a character. We cannot see the torso, but we see the hands holding a head that might be decapitated. And there's a lot of violence on this site. On right on the entrance, we also see this feature, which is a speleothem that was worked by the ancient Maya. It's a stalactite or stalagmite, and it might be placed on a site right on the entrance of the cave, as we have seen in some other caves. This is an important feature because we have been finding some interesting speleothems placed in areas that I believe can tell us a story. I will go back to that a little later. But let's talk about Chichen Itza now, because I'm going to center my talk about collapse, crisis, etc. in Chichen Itza. The archaeological data and evidence of climatic change are used to suggest that the collapse of the area of Uxmal, Chichen Itza, all what we call the central northern lowlands on the Maya area, happened at the same time, but this is a mistake. There was different, let's call them collapses, because there's a lot of controversy still on that. But we have some indicators that tell us that Chichen Itza entered into a huge crisis. Once again, and as the other evidence point, around the terminal classic period. What we have found on one of the most important caves in the Mayan area, the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza that you are looking at there, that had been excavated not with very conventional methods in the beginning of the 20th century by Edward Thompson, a guy that was a consul of the United States in Merida, Yucatan. And he was an explorer and an archaeologist. And he excavated this well in 1907 with the best technology available. But you have to remember that to get to Chichen Itza from Merida, the capital of Yucatan, then should have been at least 2 days of travel on horses and taking all this machinery. So it was a big effort by Mr. Thompson, who recovered a lot of artifacts from this place. I believe, without any doubt, that the richest offering in a cave in all the Mayan area comes from this amazing cenote in Chichen Itza. Actually, Chichen Itza owes its name from the Chichen Itza, means the place where the Itza live by the well. There's a lot of history about caves there. In the 60s, a Mexican expedition directed by Dr. Roman Piña Chan and authorized by the archaeological authorities in Mexico undertake another excavation. They use pumps, they use much more modern equipment, and if you see the pictures, you see the water on these pictures, it looks crystal clear, turquoise, compared to what we see there. Well, Mr. Piña Chan decided that he wanted the divers, because they use divers then, to be able to look at what was done there. So they used muriatic acid, chlorine, all kinds of chemicals, and they were able to clear it out for 2 weeks. Of course, they make it much worse than what it was a month later, because all this came back. But they were able to recover a lot of artifacts this way. As I told you, this is probably the richest offering on variety and the kind of artifacts they found. On the center, you see a rubber figurine. They are very mysterious. We don't know what they represent or what they were used for. You can see jade necklaces, all kinds of jewelry, crystal rock, amber, and something that is unique for the Mayan area. There was gold on that cenote, and this is what Mr. Thompson was after. So he didn't recover a lot of gold, but Dr. Piña Chan recovered some of it. Anyway, there was not only amazing materials made by men, there was another important information in the sacred cenote that I had the opportunity to study years ago. The bones of hundreds of victims of, probably victims of sacrifice. We don't know if all of them were sacrificed, But if they were, we have the biggest sacrificial site in the Mayan area with over 250 victims. Um, when I started analyzing the material, I found out that most of the bones, most of the individuals were children between 6 and 11 years old. That takes us back to remember that children were the preferred offering for the rain gods in Mesoamerica. That happened almost all over the sites. And what we see here, it's some marks of ritual violence about the moment of death. There is cut marks here, maybe scalping on this children's skull. He was around 11 years old. We have amazing cranial deformations. You know that the ancient Maya made this cultural modification to the shape of the head when they had the babies. They either use bands or wood, and they changed the shape of the skull. This was like a distinctive mark. So we find a lot of those, and we have a lot of different shapes of deformation. But we also see which tell us that the tradition of offering children in the sacred cenote might be long-standing. This goes against the traditional writers like Tozer, an amazing archaeologist, that define the sacrifice time of Chichen Itza only to the post-classic. But we see different shapes. We have to radiocarbon analyze. This haven't happened, and we are just waiting for authorization from our authorities to start doing that and be able to learn exactly what happened. But what we have learned just by looking at these bones is that these children, most of the victims, were not very healthy at the moment of death. They were having trouble. They were in crisis. So this might represent a moment of huge crisis. I'm telling you this because we can see some criba orbitalia in the area of the eyes. Some of it it's amazingly deep. This happened when an individual has big periods of anemia, malnutrition, diseases. So this tells a big story about the health of these individuals deposited in the cenote. We see marks, a lot of marks of violence. Once again, cut marks of defleshing. We even see some signs of decapitation. And once again, the individuals there, like these children, like most of the children, like 94% of the dental pieces were in terrible condition. There were cavities that might even be cause of death. So these guys, these people were not having a lot of were not having a good life. We even see this is a rib, left rib of children around 9 to 11. Hard to tell exactly on a rib, but we see marks of a knife going in and out several times. This is very sensitive. I'm sorry. We have heat exposure. And what I think is the most amazing discovery in Chichen Itza sacred cenote, you might recognize these marks. They are not violence, they are not cut marks, but they fascinated me because they are root edging marks. That means this person, the person that this bone belongs to, which is a humera, was buried for a considerable period of time on the surface. And then it was exhumated and was secondary deposited in the sacred cenote. This tell me about this new idea of deposition of bones in caves. They are maybe a call to the ancestors, maybe an individual that was causing, or it was believed that this dead person maybe was somebody that was captive in battle, or it was causing trouble to the community. So they had to exhume it and put it on a very powerful place like the cenote. I mean, there's a lot of different ideas. My idea is that these bones are there because it's like called to the ancestors to honor somebody or to legitimize the authority of a ruler, that we know that have happened in other areas. But Chichen Itza have a lot of cenotes. We know the sacred cenote, and this is another one. The sacred cenote is to the north of the main temple in Chichen Itza, which is a temple of Kukulkan, the Maya version of the feather serpent. It's also called El Castillo. And to the south, or my colleagues on the past have said that this cenote, Xtolok, was the domestic cenote for Chichen Itza. They even call it the laundry place of Chichen Itza, which I believe it's not very true. Let me tell you something. We have learned that for the Maya, for the modern Maya even, all caves and cenotes were sacred, are sacred. And when they do a ceremony, they still do ceremonies nowadays, especially to propitiate rain. It's called the Chachak. It is before the rainy season. It's actually around this time of the year. They have to mention all the caves and cenotes around, and the deities that own that cenote, the deities that take care of that cenote. So this is how sacred they are. So to tell that in a big city like Chichen Itza, the ancient Maya used cenote for laundry, it sounds not very logical. So we explore this place, and as you can see, the water is not very nice. We are using some technology to try to see what's on the bottom, and we had found two caverns that we are expecting that can take us to a mythical cenote that's supposed to be right under El Castillo. I will show you where exactly in a minute. El Castillo is in the center of four cenotes, and we believe it's forming a cosmogram. It's a city in the form of a cosmogram, like it happened, and we can see and documented in some other places in Mesoamerica. But more interestingly is that my colleagues that claim that this was a laundry place never saw this feature right at the edge of Ixtolok cenote. It's a big structure, maybe 15 meters in height. I say maybe because we had not excavated this. We just been exploring and removing some of the vegetation, and wow, we found this amazing structure that nobody had reported before in one of the most visited and explored and investigated sites in the Mayan area. But guess what? It's in the cenote. So maybe it's not worth it to go see what's there. Okay, so now we know we were missing a lot by not take a closer look. In Istolog, there's even artificial caves. You know, they are traditionally called sascaveras. Sascab is this clay that was very important to build a city, to build the monuments. Sascab means white ground. So this is supposed to be sascaveras, but let me ask you something. Don't you think it's going to be much easier to have an open air mine and to extract the sascab that way? Why taking the bother of building a sascavera or a mine that goes horizontally sometimes for 300 or 400 meters and that you have to crawl through? We believe that yes, they use SASCAP for building. It has a practical purpose, but all this big effort, we believe they are building sacred places. They are building sacred caves all over the sites to bless part of the site or to connect these sacred features in between buildings, even though it's under the ground. Um, what can we see in Chichen Itza? Well, the interpretations of archaeological data collected over the last 5 decades in the northern Maya lowlands. The northern Maya lowlands are all this area you're looking at. This is the southern lands, highlands of the Maya. And we have a lot of sites concentrated here. Here's Chichen Itza, Goba, Ekbalam, that I show you a picture from. Close to Chichen Itza, it's Jalahau, and some other site, Uxmal, it's around here. So in this area, by the end of the classic Maya cultural tradition and civilization, um, there was a big problem with routes. We actually could see that Uxmal goes to its demise, and then after that, Chichen Itza started having a lot of problems. The problems of Chichen Itza started around the between the 10th and 11th century of our era. There is actually signs of activity, ritual activity, to try to please the gods, to provoke rain. This is an amazing place in Chichen Itza. It's Hortun Cenote. You see, it's a very small entrance, but it's a big one in terms of symbological features and what we had found. It's a square, as you can see, just like the cosmos for the Maya. It was a square, it was a rectangle, it was a quadrangle with the four corners of the universe, north, south, east, and west, and with the center, which is the axis mundi, where everything was created, where the sacred ceiba tree grow, and where everything good or bad could come to the world. So it's amazing that they made this entrance. Even in some places, in some of the walls here, we can see perforations like anchors, maybe for ladders or ropes. They use this place very heavily. When this happened, well, we have divided according to the paleoclimatologists following them. Uh, David Hodel, Mark Brenner, Medina. We have followed their work, and we have a publication on this that I would love to share with you, Jay. I'm sorry I didn't send it before. Maybe you found it, but we talk a lot about these things. And let me show you on that article. We have um, this little table. It's the cultural periods, the dates, the climatic periods according to the paleoclimatologists, and the sociocultural events. So if we start on the bottom, on the pre-classic period, we have a wet climatic conditions between 1500 BCE and 200, 300 CE. On the early classic, late classic, we have, and to the terminal classic, we have a long time, a long period of drier climatic conditions. We have a big change in the world on climate conditions due to several events, natural events, even volcano eruptions. This is one of the hypotheses. So by the terminal classic, our colleagues have placed the collapse of Chichen and Uxmal. And for the post-classic, we have a much wetter climatic condition between 1100 to 1550 CE. And this is the rise of the city of Mayapan and Tulum in the northern lowlands. For practical terms, let's concentrate on the terminal classic, where we have a huge drought that we don't know exactly how long it was. Even though there was this big drought in the area, and it has a lot of problems because the Maya was an agricultural civilization, and they needed rain. They needed rain for the crops. By the terminal classic, there was at the very least 30,000 souls living in Chichen Itza, and they needed to eat. And they could not produce crops because it's not raining. They have a lot of water, even though the water of these cenotes, because they're talking about 5, 10, or 15 years of drought. Some authors said 100 or 200 years of drought. I think that's too much. But even 5 or 10 years, 15 years, I mean, that's catastrophic. That's the end of the world for them. But they still have water. They can still drink water, and they can still maybe use that water on little crops on their houses. They're called canches, where they can cultivate small things, squash and some other vegetables. But they were not having a good time. Anyway, they are desperate for water. And we believe that these droughts cause that the water level of the cenotes go down even 10 meters, which is a lot. This cenote is Hortun Cenote, is the one with that little entrance. When you get through that entrance and you see this, you see an amazing, beautiful site full of important information. They had water, but the water level went down, so they're desperate for rain. And they have the courage to go down through using ropes. They go to the water level, and then they go to the edge of the cenote, somewhere around here, which was drier. So they get into this little cavern. And in that little cavern, they make offerings. And we can see the perspective from inside out of that little square on the surface. And on this natural shelf, where there is the cavern, they deposited a big amount of materials, a big amount of ceramics, human bones, animal bones, jade, even stingray spines. Maybe you're familiar with the use of stingray spines and some other kind of spines. It's a little painful for us guys because, well, it was used in a ceremony to produce rain, which consisted on placing or passing that stingray spine, which is serrated, through the penis. And that way provoke a lot of blood and make a kind of empathetic magic of rain, of fertility. And that's painful, but we had found at least 3 of those stingray spines, beautiful ceramic, human and animal bones all over, a lot of charcoal. You can see on the bottom to the right hand side of the picture. They were burning wood there, even some vessels with an offering inside, in this case, an animal that might have been in the decomposition.
I think, are you frozen there, Memo? Can you hear me? Are you back? Your mute's on, Memo. There you go.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, we lost you there for a minute.
Good. Yes, I was speaking then. Where's everybody? Okay, so I was showing you the human sacrifices that are there. I miss you again.
Yeah, you give us the slides.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just need your slides again, though.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So we have the offerings of human bones or the deposited of people. Yeah.
Can you reshare your slides? Your presentation's not showing.
Oh, sorry.
That's the problem with Zoom. You can't tell if what other people are seeing.
Okay, let me see. Where we were there. Can you see my presentation now?
Yeah, we got the array of slides here.
Right, excellent. So this cenote is showing us a lot of things. It's giving us a lot of information, but one of the things that is showing is there was a big problem in the area then. They are doing a big effort to do deposits of offerings. Stingray spines is the one we can see. I'm sorry, the picture is not very good, but they are very small. They're very hard to pinpoint on a photograph. And we can see Tlaloc. At the beginning of the presentation, I told you this is Chac, the water god for the Maya. And then we are in the heart of the Mayan area and we see Tlaloc. Tlaloc is the central Mexico rain god. What is Tlaloc doing in the bottom of a cenote in the Mayan area? Well, you might heard about this influence between central Mexico and Chichen, specifically between Tula and Chichen, between the Toltecs and Chichen. There is no proof of that, even though we have Tlalocs and we have shapes, we have architecture displaying the Toltec style, but we don't know what happened exactly. Is this style imported from central Mexico to Chichen, or it was the Chichen people going to central Mexico? The controversy continues. And the controversy, it's even worse now when, because of a cave that I will show you that we are studying right now. But before going through that, let me just put you in perspective about where we are. This is Chichen Itza. This is the central part of the great level on the great platform level that happened terminal classic to post-classic. This is El Castillo, the main temple, sacred cenote to the north, Ixtoloc that I showed you to the south. To the east, I don't know why I cannot see it in the slide. To the east, there it is. There's Cenote Xcanjuyum, Cenote Hortun that we have been talking about, and the central place is El Castillo. Now, to add more interest to this, Dr. René Chavez, our colleague from Mexico City University, just found out through electromagnetic studies that there is a cenote down there in under El Castillo. So they built El Castillo, the axis mundi of the place, over a cenote, which is super interesting for us. And guess what we have been looking for? We have been looking for that, for an interest to that cenote that we had not found on the last 4 years, but we have a collateral effect, which is amazing because we have been able to discover many new things like the cave that I will show you in a few minutes. Let me tell you that Hortun Cenote, the one to the west, right here, is not only a place of big offering, is not only the one that is exactly to the west. If you see, the directions are perfect. They build that structure taking into account those 4 cenotes. And we have a special event. I mentioned that in Xochicalco, central Mexico, they build these orifices to allow the light going in. Well, guess what? In Hortun, twice a year, the zenith passage of the sun that happened the 24th of May, it just happened, and the 19th of July, and we have this spectacular live entrance in the cenote. In this photograph by our star photographer in the project, Carla Ortega, which spent hours in a little niche in the cenote to be able to take this picture. Actually, we actually forgot about her when we were climbing up. She screamed, "I'm still here." And I'm glad we recovered her because she brought this amazing picture.
The
And
sacrifice.
yeah, it was like a sacrifice, I know. And so this infography from National Geographic show all the features in Hortun. We have the entrance of the light. We have the little cavern that used to be dry by the early classic period, and then it got flooded up to here. So we have to dive now. We have all these amazing artifacts. And the cosmogram formed by El Castillo and the four cenotes. There is another fabled cave in Chichen Itza. Believe it or not, and with this idea of not paying too much attention to caves, this is Balancanche. Balancanche, it's said that it represents right in the middle of the cave, like 600 meters from the entrance, there is this natural feature that during a ceremony on the late 50s, on an excavation performed by Dr. Willie Andrews IV, there was a shaman, there was a priest. It's Shmen. It's a Shmen. And he said, Don Romualdo, this ceremony lasted 2 days, and they drink a lot of balche, and they got altered states of minds. They might even have some fun. But anyway, Don Romualdo, the priest, said at a moment, this is the throne of the Balam. The Balam is the Jawar, but Balam could also be the king. So he said, this is the throne of the Balam. This is the saber tree that it's holding the sky. So the archaeologists got shocked when they heard that from Don Romualdo. And we learned a lot about that ceremony and that excavation. But anyway, what you can see in Balancanche is a huge, amazing offering of incense burners. This in the form, oh, I'm sorry, it's super sensitive, in the form of Tlaloc. Once again, the central Mexico rape god. What's going on? Why is Tlaloc in the heart of the Mayan area? Is this an invasion from Tula? There's no evidence of that. Is this a shared knowledge? Is this desperation and praying to a foreign god because Chak is not doing the job they needed? Once again, all these belong to the terminal, from the terminal to the post-classic period. Dr. Andrews finds these artifacts full of charcoal, full of offerings, full of information, and Dr. Andrews just didn't get that information. He get information from only one. And that has been a frustration because this is a key cave for cave archaeology, for Maya cave archaeology. This is super important. So working, trying to find out a passageway to the entrance of the cenote under El Castillo, if there is one, we came out to a place with a little entrance that was completely blocked. Let me tell you a little bit of the history. One of our helpers, the Maya helpers, Don Luis, told us, well, there I know of a cenote, but it's blocked. So how come it's blocked? And then they start telling us a big story that we didn't understand completely then. And it was such a small place full of rocks that we removed, we excavated and found a little entrance. It happened to be the amazing cave of Balamku. Balamku, and this is the only evidence that we have of what happened 60 years ago. A group of farmers, ejidatarios, specifically this little kid that it's my friend now. He's Don Esteban Mason. Um, this kid was looking for a place to get water from his father. And he found this little hole. And he figured out that it might be water there because he felt there was humidity. So he started removing stones and things. And he found a little entrance. And he crawled. He was very brave. And he go get candles. And he was with his candles crawling. He's small. He was small. So he can go through. And he found artifacts on the first chamber. He was so surprised and so shocked. And he said he went to archaeologists in Chichen Itza and tell them I had found vessels from our ancestors, from our abuelos, grandfathers. And then a commission got there and found out that this little kid had found one of the most amazing caves in Mayan area. The entrance, as you can see, it's very small, forcing the visitors to enter hands and knees. There's a long, narrow passage that descends sharply, but there's a lot of rocks. And we enter there, as you can see, it's hard. It's hard to be there. But once we go through maybe 200 meters, we get to this beautiful and wide passageway where you have to crawl. We have to crawl for hundreds of meters. Now we know the cave is 650 meters to what our map is in the state of our map is now, and it was all worth it. It's a big effort because the air there is very bad. There's not a lot of oxygen. But what we found was super important. A big concentration of artifacts that I will show you, of course, in a minute. But let me tell you about the entrance once again, because there's very, very important features there, like this speleothem, this huge stalactite. It's right on the entrance, and it's clearly forced there. They throw it there. There is no signs on the ceiling that this stalactite was there naturally. Actually, it's about a meter long, and this passageway is about 95 centimeters. So there's no way it was on the ceiling. So they force it inside there. If you remember from my slides, I show you something similar on the other cenote I talked to you about, where there was a temple destroyed by force. And so we think we have the same thing in this place. Actually, there is this traits on the surface. It's actually two of those. This is what I mean. Those were altars, and we believe that speleothem was in one of these altars. Speleothems are placed in very sacred places to honor the place, or for a special ceremony, or to as a proof of or to legitimize the power of somebody, to claim the property of the area, the cave. So there were important features. So if there was a violent action in Chichen Itza, they went to the very, very sacred places like Balamku, like the cave I show you, and maybe like Hortun, because we have seen in the bottom of Hortun big sculptures decapitated and thrown into the water. So Balamku, it's not only an amazing cave full of artifacts, but it's also telling us a big story about a crisis and probably about the collapse of Chichen. There's no written record. There is no evidence outside of what happened, where exactly Chichen Itza collapsed. and this cave might tell us what happened. So far, our project has run 3 dates on carbon removed from some of these incense burners. It's just very little, 3 samples over more than 200 incense burners, but we are just on the beginning phases of this project, and we have 3 dates. Sorry, the earliest is 860 EC. Then we have a date of 980, and then we have a date of 1088, which give us a period just on those 3 burners of 200 years of use of this cave. We are going for more as long as we can go out after this quarantine, which we hope it happens soon, and retrieve more information about the collapse. Something that have called strong our attention is that some of the burners are untouched. They are complete. They are beautifully placed. And in some other areas, we see this. They are destroyed, apparently intentionally, with violence. The ancient Maya had this ceremony. They didn't only sacrifice people, they also sacrificed objects like ceramic. They kill the ceramic to make the soul go out. But this doesn't look like a regular ceramic killing, which is maybe a little hole or things like that. This looked like a violent event that happened inside the cave, maybe to desecrate the cave. We have a date of 1088 on one of the charcoal samples that might be indicating that on the 11th century of our era, Chichen collapsed. There is just theories. There's no archaeological proof so far. So we might have the first proof of the Maya collapse through the Balamku cave, which once again is not only a beautiful, interesting, full of amazing Tlaloc images once again inside, but it's also a big treasure of information that we are just starting to recover. Actually, we just have and the map of the site, and we know it's 650 meters, but we know there's still much more going. So I hope soon Dr. Silverstein invite me again, and we can have a series of talks about collapse. And let's consider this one, if you think it's okay, the beginning of this, just the introduction to this subject, so I can share with you much more information, much more caves, much more sites, and talk about the Maya collapse view from the perspective of caves, which is, I believe, the best way to understand what happened in times of crisis, in times of droughts, in times of all this intense drama, where the ancient Maya believe their own worlds were collapsing and disappearing, getting to an end. So I hope I didn't take too long, so we have time for some questions and or comments.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely fascinating. And I know I can ask a lot of questions. We've got about 20 minutes left for the class, but we can stay over if some people want to stay later if you have time. But let me open it up to the class first, and for any questions. Let me get your pictures up here so I can see if there's any hands up.
I think somebody's asking something bad.
Yeah, I have a hand. So I'm sorry, maybe you already stated that, but I want to clarify because I missed this somehow. So when we talk about the scalps of kids, I'm just interested who was working in this case. Like you said that they are too narrow, and so maybe from the very beginning, kids were used as a labor, as it was during industrialization. Yeah.
You mean that kids perform the offerings and everything?
Yeah.
Yes, that's an interesting theory. Of course, we had think about that because we have these specialists on our team, especially Anda Alanis, this amazing woman who's a ultra marathonist, but she's very small. And then she's like a little kid. And she's the one that is selected to go into these little holes, the same as our friend Arturo Bayona. So we have been speculating about that, about kids doing the job. But remember that the ancient Maya were not very big. The average height was 150, 160, maybe a tall guy, and they were skinny. So maybe also they have specialists that are small enough to carry all these artifacts. But imagine how hard could have been to take these incense burners, try to get them intact to these little places, through these little places, to be able to get to these chambers, which are the only ones, by the way, where the artifacts are. These are the only areas where you can stand up in some of them. But anyway, yeah, this is a very interesting theory. All thinking about the fact that the rain gods prefer children because maybe they resemble their assistants. Like Chak had what is called the Chakis. There is 4 impersonators in small shape. There's like small little Chaks that impersonate the god itself, and they are on the 4 corners of the universe. The same happened on the central part of Mexico with Tlaloc. It has its Tlaloques, which are smaller versions of Tlaloc. So, yeah, that's an interesting question and an interesting hypothesis. Yeah.
Yeah, Artyom.
Thank you for the lecture. And you've mentioned that there was this quite typical kind of cosmology that Mayas had with the underworld, like humans' world and heavens. And you've also said that there was kind of like self-referentiality of it, and that, the buildings on the surface were somewhat resembling the structure of this cosmological picture, and these caves were somewhat resembling it. But were there things or buildings or something else that could have resembled the heavens part, and could have it been inside these caves?
Sure. What a great question too. There's it's a game of opposites that complement themselves. So yeah, as it's up, it's down. And one of the most common theory about the pyramids is that they are representing mountains that get you closer to the sky. And we had found, this is why Otto invited me to other lectures. So, because I can show you more of our caves. We had found caves with pyramids inside. So that's a very interesting relationship of opposites that complement each other. It's so interesting, and this is why I tell you, the cave archaeology is fascinating. It was not taking into account being probably the answer for a lot of questions that we had not been able to answer on surface archaeology. So we must complement each other. the important surface archaeology with the important cave archaeology, so we can get to a better understanding of cosmology, and especially ritualization, which is we have the tendency in archaeology to say everything's ritual, but rituality, it's hard to understand, and it's very important, as you all know.
Other questions?
Yeah, may I also add another one?
Sure.
That is more technical, because I'm interested in how do you prepare, like what the things do you need to make all the excavations and so on. Is there a probability that there are some creatures, like I don't know, like for instance microbes, viruses, or even small dangerous animals and so on? And because right now it seems that you do not afraid water, do not afraid height, you have no claustrophobia and so on.
yeah, exactly. It's important not to be claustrophobic on these places, or at least to control yourself the most you can. I was going to answer immediately, no, there's no viruses, but right now I don't know. So we gotta be careful with what we say. But we had not found that kind of problems. But yeah, there's snakes, there's bats, which are not harmed. They're harmless unless you eat them, and it's a dangerous activity. Yes, it is. But we take all kind of precautions. Let me tell you a story that I didn't tell you today, but it's interesting about this cave in particular. When we finally enter, which take us to get to the first passageway, take us to about a week. And when I finally get to that narrow place and I start crawling, on the first part, they say, "Well, yeah, we had a passageway that goes right in the middle, on this very narrow area. There's this big, because it was big for a coral snake, a big coral snake." and when you are there without being able to move, it really feel a little weird. Yes, I was scared. And then Carla, our photographer, was behind me, and I stopped and said, "Well, everything was well, but we have a little problem." And she said immediately, "As long as it's not a snake, everything's fine." And I said, "Well," and then nothing's fine, because yes, it's a snake. Then we start coming back. But yeah, this is the kind of things that can happen in caves. We just have to be super careful, especially when the cave is flooded. There's not many animals on a flooded cave. There's thousands of crustaceans, though. But you have to be aware of your time, your equipment, your state of mind, so not to get lost, etc. See, these are some of the technicalities about cave archaeology, but it's fascinating. It's all worth it.
Alyssa.
I was wondering about the child sacrifices, of like how they selected which children gonna be sacrificed. Like you said, like they were like in some case in really bad shape. So could it be if there was a crisis, they selected children from low standard, or like who were already sick, to ensure the reproduction of the society?
Well, what a good question. You guys are doing great questions. Yeah, let me tell you that when I find that out in Chichen Itza, in the Chichen Itza collection, I started looking at some historical documents from colonial times, specifically the 16th century, where there was a big activity by the bishop, Guillermo de Anda, who was trying to eradicate the what he called idolatry, because he said this is devil things like sacrifices and all this. So he captured a lot of people, and they explained that they were still doing human sacrifices in caves and in other places. And they explained the way they get their victims for the sacrifice, and most of them were from the outcast, they go to places and kidnap or stole children for sacrifice, even there on the colonial times, or something that sounds very, very cruel, but it happens nowadays for other purposes. They buy children from orphans or people that just don't want to take care of them. So yeah, they were from a lower part of society, and this is what we see reflected even on pre-Hispanic times, because we know for a fact that some of the wars that the Maya performed were wars for territory, for political, mainly political reasons. There, in territory was one of them. Was, I think, one of the most important ones, but also to get victims for sacrifice for the gods. So maybe they get the children there in these military campaigns. So yeah, that's a very good question, and it looks, however they get the kids, they were not on very high status parts of the society. I don't believe the rulers selected their children for sacrifice. There's this myth that it was an honor to be sacrificed, and people was in a row, hey, I want to be sacrificed because it's such an honor. I think they were just as humans as we are, and I don't think they really wanted to be sacrificed.
But a lot of them had cranial deformation, which is usually a sign of high status, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, it's a sign of high status, and we saw some cranial deformations on the sacred cenote. There's controversy about it's really high status or everybody performed it. I still believe it's a sign of high status, of that not everybody perform it. Actually, on the sacred cenote, we have skulls without cranial deformation. Some of them. That could be because not everybody got cranial deformation. That's logical to think. Or this happened on very late times, like colonial times, where they did not do the cranial deformation anymore. So the children that we have seen with cranial deformation, with the most flamboyant, sort of speaking, cranial deformations in the sample of Chichen Itza, were not as badly as bad nutrient and stuff. What we see is isolated mandibles that show all these problem of cavities. So it's hard for us to relate the cranial deformation with health status. But I have to say, though, that the skulls that I show you with criba orbitalia, that was anemia and some other problems, they display a cranial deformation. So the controversy got there again. Was really a high status practice, or maybe even low status people do it? So we still have a lot to learn, especially regarding bones in the Mayan area.
Anna.
So yes, thank you for your lecture. I have more like a question about your experience in this scrolling. And so in the podcast of National Geographic, you tell about your meeting with one of the most poisonous snake. And I was, and I am shocked and excited about this like experience. And so I have a question. Could you tell us more about these like spiritual religious connections of Maya to such animals, and also about, for example, your emotions in that moment? So, yeah.
Sure. Another interesting question. I was completely thrilled. And then I start coming back, and Carla said, well, I'm so scared. Are you afraid? I said, no, of course I'm not afraid. I was really, really scared. But I did something. I took pictures with my cellular phone of this snake. And then we got out and to make a plan. And I told our Mayan guides, which are part of the project, they are so important for us. Without them, we cannot do anything, actually. And then I showed the pictures. And they said, wow, I know a lot of people that have died because of bite of this. They go, well, they give me a lot of comfort when you say that. But anyway, the important part of this and of your question, they said to me straight in my face, this is the owner of the cave. This is the spirit of the owner of the cave, and it's just not allowing you to go through. And let me tell you something, that snake, that far away in the cave, on a complete dark area, doesn't have any business to be. I talked to biologists and they say they are usually in the entrance of caves. This was very far away from the entrance. And then the Maya told us, you have to perform a ceremony and ask for special permission to go there. So we, of course, had our ceremony that lasted, it didn't last 2 days like the one in Balancanche, but this one lasted 7 hours. We drink a lot of balche, which is this sacred beverage made out of the bark of a tree. It's hallucinogenic. I took 2 glasses because the man told me I had to drink 2 complete glasses. Actually, it's very sweet. And then I drink them like it was Coca-Cola or something. And after those 2, I was having visions. And then the shaman, this man told me, you have to go through now and see what happened if the snake's still there. Anyway, the important part of all this is the tradition is still alive. The cosmovision is still there. The oral tradition lives. And of course, it's syncretic now. It's a syncretism between Catholicism and the old Maya religion. But they still believe in the spiritual beings. As I mentioned on my talk, when there are ceremonies for rain or for something else, the shaman, the priest, have to call all the deities, all the owners, spiritual owners, and call the cenotes or caves, which are the same, by name. Not to do that would be disrespectful for a cave or for a deity. So, yes, all these spiritual beings, being a snake, sometimes they're in the shape of a monster or in the shape of a bat. We have another helper, Dionisio is his name. And we went diving a long time ago. This is in Archaeology magazine, but I think it was on the 2004 issue. Was Christine Romy writing that story. And we went diving in a cenote. And when we got out, Dionisio, our helper, was all excited and scared. And I was so scared from you. Why did you take so long? I thought you were dead. And what happened, Dionisio? It just 50 minutes, an hour of dive. This is the regular time on this deep cave. And he explained, he said, well, right after you get into the hole and disappeared from that cave at the edge, is like a wall, I saw this serpent with the head of a horse and like hair on the head going into the water and following you. And I'm like, Dionisio, stop using that stuff. You know? But he was very serious. He was, I'm telling you, Memo, I was really afraid. I'm very glad that you're back. And then he called Christine and he's like almost crying. And said, wow, the tradition is still very, very, very well alive. What he saw was product of his imagination, of his ancient beliefs. I don't know, but it's fascinating that still nowadays all these things are happening.
Yeah, I would say from all the places I've worked in the world, the spiritual aspect of the Maya region seems most still alive.
Yes, yeah.
I've seen things out in Tikal that I just could never explain.
Yeah, Jay, I think you have amazing stories from Tikal. I've heard amazing stories from Tikal because there is a very strong tradition there of priests or this cofradías that one of them, it's the one that used to be the guardians of the Popol Vuh. I remember. And I have this friend, maybe you know her, Sofia Paredes. She's from Guatemala, used to be in Tikal, archaeologist. She told me that she went to, I don't remember where the Popol Vuh is now, the original one. I'm sorry. I think it's, I don't remember. Sorry. Yeah, but they went to this place in the States, and they presented the Popol Vuh to this shaman, the head of the cofradia. And Sofia described that like this guy started crying. And even though they told him you should not touch it, he touched the codex, the book. It's not a codex. It's a book. It's a book that the priest Jimenez wrote on Latin characters. And he's like, where are your brothers? You have to be with your brothers. So that meant that there's still more books under the guardian of these guys. But anyway, yeah, I've heard amazing stories about Tikal. So yeah, I'm sure you have some.
Let's pass over to Artyom. We're just about out of time. So actually for the class, our time is over. So if you need to go, Memo, if you have time and want to stay on, we can keep talking.
I do, in case somebody wants to stay a little bit, sure.
Okay, so anyone who wants to hang on, feel free. Artyom?
Yeah, you were talking now about this great syncretic mix of Christianity and native beliefs. And, well, in our small research projects as a part of this course, we encountered kind of similar situation with one African empire that had this great syncretic mix of Islam and, again, like native beliefs. Maybe you can point us at some papers or even some experience of yourself about treating these mixes of beliefs and maybe dividing them into what was before and what came after.
Oh yeah, sure. I do have this article. It's in Spanish though, but it's not a long article. It needs a little review. I would love to translate it into English and try to republish it, because there is much more things that I have learned. But I would love to share it with you, even though it's not published soon. I can do that manuscript and send it to you, because this particular article I want to review and I want to make it longer. There is now much more information that I have, and I can correct some stuff, and I will be more than glad to share it with you. Yeah, that way you made me do it. Okay.
Yeah, you can relay that through me and Artyom, and then we'll stay in touch. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's do that, Jay. And as I told
you can exchange email too if you want. That's fine too. But
sure. You please feel free to share my email with whoever you need to share.
Okay.
And as I said, let's keep an invitation open if you don't mind. I would love to continue.
Yeah. No, maybe we can actually, if this lockdown ever ends, maybe someday you can come out and visit us here.
Oh, that'll be amazing. Yeah. Let's hope this ends someday. Oh, yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. In the cave Balamku, the geological formation where the incensarios are all set up around, is that geological formation considered as sort of a representation of a ceiba tree?
We had not seen something like that, with the exception of one small feature in the second offering room, where there is like a cascade of incense burners. I'm sorry I didn't put that picture there, but I can share it with you, no problem. And right on top of it, it's like a little cave. It's like a mini cave with one of these features. It's like a ceiba tree. We had found that in at the very least two more caves. The one that I showed you with the sack bay, with the causeway inside. By the way, is the only cave in the Mayan area with the sack bay inside. There is a representation of that ceiba and a lot of potsherds around it. Unfortunately, that cave was looted before we documented, and there's only potsherds. And there's another amazing cave that we can talk about some other day. This is on the south of Yucatan. We call it the sanctuary. And there is amazing mural paintings on the walls and representations on three dimension of animals and stuff like that. And by the end of the journey, which is a very hard one, you have to rappel down almost 150 meters on several sections of the cave, and then the problem is going up. But anyway, when you get to the end of the journey, like 8 hours inside the cave, you get to this big representation of an amazing, beautiful ceiba tree. Now we call them ceiba trees, and that one still preserves an offering around. So yeah, it's amazing that now I think we know better what to look for.
Yeah. Another question is on the Tlaloc incensarios. Are they locally made? Have you sourced them, or are they imported?
We this is a big question that we are just about to know. We have this, as everywhere else in the world, there is a process to get permission to do every little thing.
For Egypt.
Exactly, especially here in Mexico. I don't know if you guys are familiar with. But anyway, we're in a good, very good terms to do some analysis of the ceramic, because that's a key question.
Yeah.
Where this ceramic was made. That's a super important question. Actually, in this next excavation project, we are planning also to clear out the entrance of the cave. We are going to take a sample of the stalagmite. We believe there is a stairway below all those stones that were placed there, or maybe a desacralization. And we are going to take samples to find out where that ceramic was made. So I hope we'll be able to answer this probably this year. We just have to wait to see when can we go to the field again.
Are you working with the UNAM on that?
We are working with UNAM, and we are working with through Jim Brady, through Cal State LA, in the laboratory of Santa Cruz. And we have several chances to do the analysis.
Well, let's go. Alyssa first.
Excuse me?
Sorry.
I was just curious. You said like you made this ritual, and because the snakes didn't let you into the cave. So after you made the ritual, were there any more problems?
Well, let me tell you that after the ritual, I got there and the snake was still there, and then I feel too stupid not to go through after all the ceremony and everything. And they said, well, they will say I'm a coward. And then I got through. Unfortunately, nothing happens. I just close my eyes and go through. And then we got back. The snake was still there on the way back. But the day after, the snake was not there. So that was amazing too.
Yeah, Artem again.
Yeah, we had these great guests before you. And well, I can say that you're a great guest too. Thank you for being here. And well, we had Fred Hebert, who was like looking on.
He's a good friend of Fred's.
Oh, yeah, great. Well, he's looking at the Middle Asian kind of civilizations, and he was doing these surface excavations. We had Denis Sharapov, who was doing a test pit excavations to find the like relatively underground settlement remains. And well, now you're telling us about this great cave archaeology method. Here's the question: like, is it applicable only to Maya areas? Well, because Mayas were doing these artificial caves and were using the natural ones, or are there any areas that you maybe know of that this method can be used to find archaeological evidences in?
Well, I believe this can be used all over the world. But you know, I have a good friend. Maybe you know him, Lee Berger, who's been exploring in South Africa the origins of humans, and we have this discussion all the time that the answer of many of the questions of archaeology, of the main questions of archaeology, might be in caves all over the world. It's like what he is discovering. He just gets some these hominids, 3.5 million old. He found like over 100 that's supposed to be buried in caves. So wow, that if he can prove that, that is changing the history of humanity. And caves all over the world, even in southern United States, the Chaco Canyon, the Pueblo Indians, caves in Peru. I mean, they are giving a lot of answers to questions, and I think the methodology should be followed. Especially, I think we have to perceive caves as important information holders, because materials are very well preserved, even organic materials. Most organics from the Maya we have found in the sacred cenote, for instance. Textiles, sacred cenote, even with the design patterns there, they were preserved. It's they are anaerobic places, so the preservation there it's amazing. So yeah, caves all over the world are super important, and the methodology can be used. We have to protect them from lootering, because some of them are still not looter, like what happened on surface sites, especially in Guatemala. The looters are looking for these precious polychrome pots. So lots of answers can be found in caves.
It's really important to understand the geology of the area you're working, because that's going to tell you a lot about